So I recently watched a video which was lambasting the supporting actors category at the Oscars. It used the examples of Kieran Culkin and Zoe Saldana in A Real Pain and Emilia Perez respectively, which is something I've seen a lot of conversation about. Basically saying that the category is dominated by production companies trying to get their film one more Oscar, shoehorning in co-lead performances where they don't really fit into the supporting actor category. They do this with the hopes of getting one more win, which they inevitably will, due to the fact that these people have more screen time than the other people there. And this was something the video was really focused on. It was really focused on screen times and how it compared to the other nominees in the category. Okay, this is the part where I go against the video. And I don't want to come off as a Hollywood dick licker here, sticking up for the elite in the industry, saying, hey, back off them. They're just trying their best. Because I mean they're not. They're definitely not. It's probably all corrupt. And that's a very fair assessment of the situation. And I understand the cynicism. Because I'm sure they're using it to their full advantage. What I want to do in this video is I want to discuss the performance itself and how it fits into the story around it of A Real Pain. Because I feel like that's something that gets left out of this conversation too often. I also want to look at more as a whole the ambiguity of the term supporting actor. Because by definition of the word supporting actor, I really feel Kieran Culkin was that in A Real Pain. Let me break it down for you. And I'm going to break it down by doing something a little cliche here. So keep your pitchforks away, relax, okay? Relax. I'm going to use an Oxford definition. Wait, before the boos ring out, let me explain myself, please. No, you've already clicked off? Damn it. Alright, guess just me here then. My pants up straight up. I don't know, it's just me. I thought I could just chill. Just relax. That's my immediate thought. Yeah, my first action when pants are off now. All right, so my dick's out. Let's talk about it. So I read through the Academy's rules, scanning for the word supporting actor, looking for anything in their actual words, in their actual rule book that can distinguish a lead performance from a supporting actor. So this is the only thing that I could find, and I'm going to quote directly here from the Academy's rule book. The determination as to whether a role is a leading or supporting role shall be made individually by members of the branch at the time of balloting. Yep, that's it. I promise you, that's all the mention there is of the difference between a supporting actor and a lead actor in the whole rulebook. So, truthfully, they have no way to distinguish it. It's just vibes. It's just gut feeling. And likely, as that other video said, where I'll agree, who's hot right now and who they kind of just want to give an award to. So I'm going to use an Oxford dictionary. Sue me. Alright? I don't care if I become a social pariah for it. I'm gonna do it anyway. So there are a few different definitions for the word support in the Oxford Dictionary, but I think the one that most readily applies is this: to help someone emotionally or in a practical way. So that's the definition I'm gonna be using for supporting actor and what that really means. And with that definition, I'm gonna describe why I think Kieran Culkin was well in contention for winning this year's supporting actor. So I'm gonna go back to that video one more time here in this extremely long introduction I've decided to write. Basically, at the end of his video, he called to arms the Academy to try and change this category. He was looking for it to be more fair and more balanced. But my argument is, how? From that video I watched, I'd assume he'd want some sort of percentage cap because he focused a lot on numbers. But numbers don't take into account the complexity of story. In my opinion, it'd take away from performances like Kieran Culkin's, who do deserve to be in the contention for supporting actor. Because you can't just put a cap on the amount of screen time somebody can have. It has to be more complex than that, right? And I think that leads to my biggest problem with the category as a whole. Just how absurdly underdefined and wide-ranging it is. And truly, there is no way to change that without just like abolishing it. Because that's what it is. It just is a broad category by definition, right? And before I get into the case study a little bit more, I do just want to preface this by saying I don't dislike that video, although I might have been a bit harsh on it. I actually think it was a really interesting conversation starter, and it made some really good points. It was well made, and if you went and watched it right now, you might just agree with it. I just think the case used was wrong. It's really that simple. And I don't think it really talked about the art or the complexities of it at all. Alright, let's get into it then. The case to discuss. Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. I'm not going to discuss Zoe Saldana winning it, because, to be entirely frank, I haven't watched the movie, and for some reason, I don't really feel the urge to. It's kind of fun just bashing. I feel like people just having fun bashing that movie when they haven't watched it right now. I'll just double down on that real quick. Fuck that movie. I haven't watched it, but fuck it. It sucks, dude. We all fucking hate it. And there is another argument here I'd like to quickly bring up, that Kieran Culkin won the award purely based off hype from Succession. I don't really want to talk about that in this video here. I simply want to discuss that Kieran Culkin was well in his right to win this award, that it wasn't an example of category fraud, as that other video called it, and why I think that. And I think that's just getting too broad if I start talking about nitpicky stuff like that. It's not really the context of my response. Because it could be true, in all honesty. Very much is. And what it means in a broader sense for the category and what I think the repercussions should be, I'll talk about a bit later on. But now for the stat that everybody's been bringing up that's probably going to make you not agree with my point. It's the fact that Kieran Culkin has 64.88% screen time in A Real Pain, and Jesse Eisenberg, the lead in the movie, only has 69.77%. So the difference is pretty minuscule there. It was also the highest percentage of screen time to ever win the supporting actor role, so I can see why people are up in arms about it. But I do want to pose the question, what is his actual role in the story of A Real Pain? Because that, at the end of the day, is the most important thing. It's not about the numbers. The movie basically tells a story of David and Benji, two cousins who go on a trip to Poland. They go there to learn about the Holocaust and to see their grandmother's home, which she had to flee due to the Holocaust. It's a quiet, meditative film where not too much happens plot-wise. Everything in this movie is purely character-driven, which is beautiful. I really want to preface here that I think the movie is really fantastic and you should give it a watch if you haven't seen it, because it's just such an earnest film that manages to feel so comforting, but also tackles some really dark themes at the same time, which is really impressive. But I'm getting a little sidetracked here. Purely from a story perspective, what is going on in A Real Pain? Because even though it's quiet and meditative, like I said, there still has to be some conflict, right? Because you'll sit and watch it and you will feel tense. You'll feel drama. It's the idealistic gap between these two cousins. The way they see and operate within the world, it's almost like they're polar opposites of each other. And what this idealistic gap brings out of David is key to the arc of the film. How he sees the world and how Benji changes that and the emotions that brings out of him. And what I just said there, I think that's the key. It's what it brings out of David. The whole film is told through his perspective. It's about how he sees Benji, but it's all from David's perspective. It's the emotions it brings out of him. And that's the key, what I just said there. It's what it brings out of David. And sure, that number I mentioned earlier is high, but I can't really think of a scene where Benji's in it and David isn't. Maybe bar the final scene, which I'll talk about a bit later. But there are scenes that David is in and Benji isn't. And I want to talk about one of those situations now. It's one of the only times we see beneath the character of Benji. And we do this through a monologue by David. No surprises there. Basically, Benji has just run off to the bathroom, having a bit of a breakdown. And it's from here that David lets us behind the curtain to see a little bit more of who Benji is and his manic personality. Now the film could go with Benji to the bathroom and watch him having a mental breakdown. But it's key to note that it doesn't. It sticks with David as it talks about how this affects him, and it goes closer and closer and tighter and tighter. This decision in perspective, I think, is exactly why Benji is a supporting character. It's told through David's perspective, and it's always an active choice to do this. Because to go with Benji and show him having a breakdown in the bathroom would be telling a different story. And that leads me to my next point. Benji is the conflict of this film, which might sound a little harsh to say, but it's the truth. He is the antagonist. Sure, at points you might love him, you might connect with him, you also might hate him. But that's just the mark of a good antagonist. He's well written. By definition, I'll read what an antagonist is. A character who opposes the protagonist, driving conflict in the story. And that perfectly describes how Benji fits into the story. He's the perfect counterbalance to David at the end of the day. And that's his role in the film, to support David by providing a completely different perspective. He challenges David's whole worldview, opposes everything he believes in. And at the end of the day, in a story completely driven by character, isn't that the only way you can describe an antagonist? And an antagonist is quite literally one of the most typical examples of a supporting character, because it's the opposing force to the lead, the central figure, supporting the lead by providing this other perspective, challenging them to reach the end of their arc. Their whole role, when boiled down, is to support. And I'm going to get back to that point that I mentioned earlier about how the film even ends on Benji, which I think is probably even a more damning case, right? How could he not be a co-lead if it ends on a solo shot of him? I personally see this as a way of hammering home the fact that he was just the conflict of the film, because it mirrors an earlier shot in the film of him in an airport waiting for another adventure. It shows how he drifts through life. It's a way of showing how David's perspective was drastically changed by this experience, but Benji's wasn't. He's the same force he was at the start. Okay, I've broken down the movie. I think I've made my case for Kieran. He'll be very thankful. I'll get my check in the mail. Everybody's happy. But what does this mean for the supporting actor category as a whole? Because I don't just want to be an asshole, shit on this other video, and say, okay, bye. That's not really fair. What does it mean in a broader sense? Well, I'm going to take us back to 1936, when the Supporting Actor Award was first introduced. It was born from unrest in the Screen Actors Guild, the Academy with a way to try and appease them, saying, hey, look, one more shiny toy. Hollywood was going through a big change at the time. The star system that is now ingrained in culture was still fairly new, and actors were looking for more ways to be recognized. In introducing this award, the Academy were trying to give recognition for people who brought depth, authenticity, and balance to a production, to also be recognized. People who were underrepresented in their work also got a chance to shine. It's hard to believe now, but all actors back then weren't filthy rich, especially the ones who were deemed to fall under the bracket of supporting actor. And back then, it was pretty easy to distinguish a lead from a supporting actor. The lead was always pretty or handsome, white and young, and the supporting actors were the rest of the people around that person. So, I mean, why would you need a rule to distinguish that, right? But now, I feel like we have more stars than ever, with more content than ever being produced. And so that's blurred the lines, you guessed it, more than ever. So now there are big stars in supporting roles, not just leading roles, which kind of goes against the whole point of that Supporting Actors Award to begin with. The initial design of the award was to give underrepresented actors a chance to shine. Even though back then, all actors weren't rich, supporting actors are pretty filthy rich now, right? But it still doesn't mean all actors are filthy rich. Because what about the character actors who float from production to production, never really getting the recognition they deserve? Probably underpaid. I haven't looked at the statistics. Oopsies, maybe I should have done that in research, but probably underpaid, I'd guess. Because yes, I'll admit, the award of the supporting actor is going to bigger and bigger names than ever. And it's almost certainly due to Hollywood production companies putting their grubby little mitts in there. But within the rules themselves, which I've read through, there really is no determination to say what a supporting actor is. There's no reason to give it to these people who do deserve to be seen, I agree. But under the award itself, Kieran Culkin does deserve to be in contention. Sure, he's a massive name, but he is a supporting actor and he played a fantastic role in this movie. So how could, like in the video I'm responding to, it be considered category fraud? It doesn't really make sense. So maybe, like in 1936, we've reached a fever pitch again. A fever pitch where there needs to be more recognition for underrepresented actors. And maybe the Supporting Actor Award is no longer the place for that to happen. Maybe there needs to be a new award for actors who only take up a sliver of the runtime, because they absolutely deserve recognition too. Or maybe these categories just need to be less ambiguous with their wording, like with the word supporting. Or maybe they should just have a damn definition in there. Look, I certainly don't know the answer, but it does raise a lot of interesting questions, because story is more complex than it's ever been, and I'm sure all these questions will never be solved by the Academy. Thanks guys for watching. I appreciate you tuning in to my little video essay here. I'm going to be trying to do more of these on cool, topical, interesting stuff. If you have any interesting questions in the comments, let me know. I do think this is a really interesting topic, and it's really broad, it's really ambiguous. There's a lot of conversation that can happen about it where like everybody can be right, because at the end of the day, there is no right answer on this. I just particularly felt the urge to respond to the Kieran Culkin thing, because I just think there's so much to a story. There's so much complex about it. But yeah, if you have any other video essay topics for me to do, let me know in the comments too. Subscribe, like, smash that bell, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. And if you like this video, go check out our other content too. We've got a great series called Cinema Around the World, where we travel from country to country looking at defining films and ranking each country against each other, which is pretty fun. We've got some great shorts up here too. One called Script Tips, one called Short Film Review. Basically a lot of film content. Go check it out.